our farm motto is from the book of Mice and Men. It's even the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And so I kind of feel like this will fit in with that really well, Molly.
Yeah, I agree.
As I was watching your video, and by the way, that was the first time I've seen the video of my farm. I just haven't seen it. So that was interesting. But my question for you, Molly, is like, what's changed since you've seen that? Like, it's been how many years now? 2 or 3?
Yeah, we started that planning in 2021, so about 3 years.
Right. So what's your reaction? You saw this video here. It's been 3 years. A lot has happened. Like, what are you thinking now?
I feel like hindsight is 2020. We learn from experimentation, and that was to some degree, I think, what was probably sort of the biggest takeaway from the planting that we did in 2021. It was highly experimental, 6,000 trees, super diversified systems and species, right? So we were using non-natives as well as natives in a variety of different pasture settings and sort of planting design. Some were on contour, some were along fence line. Oh, it looks like I can start my video now. Oh, hello. Can you see me now? Okay, cool. So, from that experimentation, I think what changed is just my awareness of the complexities of silvopasture. We didn't have an established silvopasture in the sense that we weren't starting from the beginning, right? Like as you saw from the video, this is an oak savanna, which is also a silvopasture, but that type of silvopasture is already established. So I think in terms of like what I've learned, what's changed is really around potentially the challenges around actually getting a silvopasture established from the point of a tree being less than 1 year old, a year old to mature and crop producing, which, you mentioned in your video, like 10 years is when you're going to get a profitable chestnut crop, right? And I think as much as we can approach silvopastures with that in mind, like what is the real intent for each species, for each design, right? Like I talked about shade and carbon, right? Which is great, but it's also challenging if there's not a specific cropping system that's going to continue to motivate the maintenance of that planting. So I think just like that context of learning from the challenges of getting it established to the point where they can thrive.
Yeah, so you mentioned these challenges, right? And so like how I would describe my farm, silvopasture, everything, I would call it early successional. It's just kind of starting out. It's growing. It looks like yours is the same way. You were talking future tense for the most part. This is going to be like this. I hope this becomes right. How's it working so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think there's a lot of lessons learned. There were a lot of failures. And I think that's what when I was invited to speak here, I sort of accepted with the clause that I would probably be sharing a lot of these lessons learned. There in the interim period of these 3 years, I like to say that we experienced like the 7 plagues. There was pretty much every potential environmental climate disaster occurred, from like intense flooding in which certain areas of plantings were underwater for months, right? To like frost that came at random times and would freeze trees that had just budded, right? To extreme pest pressure that we didn't expect, extreme drought. When we planted the trees, we had not received any rain in about a year. So when it came time to plant the trees, like we still hadn't gotten rain, and we had normally would get rain for a couple months by that time in the year. And we're operating under a grant program. We were sort of under the gun. We ended up waiting for one rain at the very least, but the trees, I think, struggled in the face of this changing climate, right? Like they are vulnerable little trees, and we pretty much threw the kitchen sink at them. So that's a bit of a winding answer, but I'm actually curious to hear the same from you. The last we spoke, you had some challenges, some successes as well, but I'm just curious where you are now after a few years.
Yeah, when I was watching that, I was like, man, everything worked when we did that video. Like
Yeah.
it was green. There was forage growing, and I was on a hot streak, I guess, at that
Yeah.
time. It was like everything was going well, right?
You were having triplets left and right.
Say what?
You were having triplets left and right.
Yes, exactly. And the kids were having a great time with it all, and so yeah, so everything was working, right? We had a really high success rate on our chestnut plantings. I'm thinking, okay, I know how to plant trees. I know how to make all this work. And so then from there, we decided, so we're completely out of row crops. We don't do that anymore. Kind of a long story, but so we're out of row crops into only grazing sheep, and we took the rest of our farm over, and we expanded out north. We used Equip to get a big grant, to get a big cost share deal. And we built all our fence. We put in in-ground water infrastructure for animals, and we planted windbreaks, and they all died. Every one of them. Because the last 2 years we have had the worst drought. Like we've been, like nobody can remember a drought that's been this bad. And it's been very unconducive. And so I've gone from thinking I'm pretty good at this stuff to there's a lot more that I need help with. And so, yeah, so we're going to do it again next year. We're going to plant the 3-line windbreak again. We're trying to figure out how do we go off of now water access points and start tree lines using drip irrigation if we need to. So we're still planning on those things, but it's a lot harder than we thought. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also curious, like you said in the video that you had gotten 100 pounds of chestnuts, I believe. Have you continued to be able to harvest chestnuts and have you brought them to market?
Yeah, so we're still, our trees are about 6 years old, or they're 6 years in the ground, so they're just not there yet. But we're like in the process there, they seem to be on the growth curve that MU says that they should be. So we're feeling pretty good about that despite the drought. We've done some very limited irrigation, largely in an IBC tote behind a side-by-side. So yeah, like we're feeling good about the progression of the chestnuts. It's all of the silvopasture and the things that are very long-term, highly motivated by the problems that could come with animals. So that we've struggled with recently. So I feel like there's answers here, and there's probably people who are smarter than me that have those answers. I just need to know who they are. So.
Yeah, one thing that I think is worth noting, and maybe the crowd would be interested in considering, is the type of funding that you deploy, I do think is important. I think you mentioned that you were working with NRCS, and we actually worked with a B corporation who paid us per tree to plant the trees, which in general, after using that type of funding, I would probably recommend against for a couple of reasons. It generally prioritizes more trees than you maybe would want to plant or is contextually appropriate. The motivation of this B Corp was to basically say, we planted this amount of trees, right? If you've ever been shopping online and seen a statement appear after you purchase something that says, with this purchase, a tree was planted, right? That was the type of funding that we received. But it's super motivated by that tree count and not necessarily by the quality of the project from a project design standpoint, right? Because the design element is super critical in tree mortality, right? You need the proper irrigation, you need the proper protection. And we did our very best given the parameters to provide all of those all of that supporting infrastructure, right? Like we did, many of our systems were planted on with drip line. Every single tree received a cardboard tree sleeve to protect it from sun and to some extent grazing pressure. The trees that were in pastures with cattle received actual like physical like hard fence around it. So I guess what I'm trying to share here is that all of those expenses can add up very quickly. And I think it's really important to, when you're approached with a funding opportunity, to consider that in your decision-making process. And I guess I'm just curious, with your experience using NRCS funding, what was the sort of rationale you and your family used to sort of crunch the numbers and determine which cropping systems would work where?
Yeah, and I'll answer that. Make sure I come back to, because I've got a question about your planning process that I'm really curious about. So don't let me forget that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So we largely went with NRCS because it was a known entity. We had done a bunch of stuff like through the FSA, like just in row cropping and cover cropping. So we knew the people there. We knew there was like our gap as row crop people. We didn't know anything about planting trees. We've done some ornamental stuff in our yard, but we didn't know anything about mass stuff. And so we knew that there would be some technical assistance. There would be people there who could help us design these. And then, and also because we were able to kind of bundle it with some other stuff. Like we bundled it with our interior cross fencing. We bundled it with water. We bundled it with portable shade structures. So like all that kind of in one lump sum was really attractive to us doing that. So now the problem with that, one of the big downfalls, we had to front the bill up. We had to pay up front, so we have to pay for everything. We get reimbursed once it's checked off on. And when stuff doesn't work, sometimes like our 3-line windbreak, we still haven't got paid for that yet. So we will next year, but, and that could just be my fault in not working the system, but yeah, so that's why we chose that. I'm always wanting some rich donor to say, hey, I'll pay you all the money to plant trees, but I realize that may not be as good as I think sometimes too, right?